more, I will still praise His name. Thank you for that song rendition. And for our AY speaker is one of our very own from Langs Church. He will be sharing with us his testimony on his journey. Let's all welcome Vern Henry.
Well, happy Sabbath. It's good to be here. I wasn't expecting to be here today. I should still be out on the trail. I'll explain that in a minute, but I was invited to come here, and I'm thankful.
Mike.
Oh, mic up. It's nice to be with my church family.
Amen.
The hike was one of the best things God could ever do for me. It was a personal experience, but you're my church family, so I will share my personal experience with you. But I know God put me out there to teach me some lessons. And it may not apply to you, but I hope that you'll gain some inspiration from it. Shut up! Just shut up! That's a very rude expression. It's not very nice, is it? Sometimes it needs to be said. And I had to say it several times on my journey. Oh, it's too hot out here. Oh, the snow's too deep. Oh, the sleet is stinging my face as the wind is blowing too hard. Oh no, it's raining again. I didn't think California was supposed to be cold. There's a lot of negative thoughts that sometimes go through our minds. And I had many months to be out there. I had many miles to go. Shut up. You just have to say shut up. I was out hiking one day, way up in the mountains. I probably 150 miles in already, and I was up on a high ridge. But I didn't go only 15 miles. I was tired. It was one of those down days. I had just left Cajon Pass, about 15 miles back, and I decided to stop and rest. I kind of went off the trail, and I found a nice place to put up my tent. Went to put up my tent, and I have a tent that I have to put trekking poles in. So I go and I stake it out, and then I go inside and put the trekking poles up. Well, just as I knelt down to put the trekking pole up, the front stake popped off. I was really discouraged. I was really down. My Achilles tendonitis in my left foot was acting up again, so my heel was hurting. This leg was swollen and had cellulitis in it. To top it all off, that day, my crown popped off one of my teeth. So I had my crown in my pocket. And as I knelt there, maybe some of you remember the children's story. Well, I brought my ground cover out that my Toastmaster group had all signed and put Bible verses on it. Well, all the pink writing is gone. It washed off in the rain, but I could still see the pink. As I knelt down there, this one popped out. It said, "Vern, you got this, Sal." I had to apologize to Sally, because I think I said some Adventist swear words. Nobody was out there, so I could scream and yell. I don't have this. She doesn't know what she's talking about. She doesn't know my situation. These are things that people just write on here. Bible promises and have a good trip and all this stuff. They just write those things on there. They don't know what I'm going through. I don't have this. And then I thought, they think I've got this. My church family gathered around and they prayed for me. That meant a lot to me. You all think that I'm doing great out there. And they think I got this, maybe I better get it. And so I went and I put the stake in and I crawled into my tent. I had a real good sleep. The next morning, I felt great. I learned the value of encouraging one another, helping out one another. About 5 miles later, well, I'll save that till later. Let's see, where should I go from here? This hike, I didn't make my goal. And I was greatly disappointed in that. But I was told that if you focus on your goal, those who really focus on your goal, they oftentimes die. And because I was trying to get to Kennedy Meadows. Kennedy Meadows is 700 miles up the trail. There's a store there. They have burgers and they have pancakes for breakfast. They let us camp out in the back. And they're really good to hikers. And that is supposed to be the gateway to the High Sierra Mountains. I had plans of leaving there and going into the mountains the 1st of June, first week in June. But as I went along, the old timers say that the mountains don't open up safely until the middle of June. June 15 is the traditional time to enter the mountains. Well, at Cajon Pass, because of my leg, I had to stay at Best Western for a couple days, my foot elevated. As I went into this is where I learned how to become technologically advanced with the Uber, put on the Uber app, took me into the hospital, got me some antibiotics. This stereotypical old nurse comes in. She just looks at that and she says, "Off your feet, you need medicine." And the other nurse that had already evaluated me says, "Well, he's hiking the Pacific Crest Trail." No, off your feet. And so I stayed at Best Western for 2 days with my leg elevated until I couldn't stand it anymore. And so then I said, I gotta go. So that's when I started off from there. At the very beginning, when I went down to Sacramento, there's a host couple down there that they pick you up at the airport, they take you to their home, they give you supper, give you a place to stay. This is the first shock that I had in California. I walked in their backyard, beautiful green grass. And I thought in California it'd all be browned out. Well, it's artificial turf. And so that's why it's all nice and green. And they have big tents up and they have 9 of us in a tent. And we stay in there and they say, now we're going to leave at 6 o'clock in the morning. So make sure you get up, have your breakfast and everything. But before we left, at the evening time, they gathered us all around. They host 40 of us every night. So there was about 40 of us there. Mostly young people. I was kind of the old guy. They gather us all around, and Scout and Frodo are the hosts. They are avid backpackers. And they gave us a little talk, or they gave us a big talk. And they told us some stories. But there was 2 things that stood out in my mind. They said, this is not a Disneyland adventure. There are no guardrails. You're going into the wilderness. So, if you need help, ask other hikers for help. But bear this in mind. Not everybody will ask for help. So keep your eyes open. You see somebody that you think might need some help? Maybe have somebody hike in front. Maybe have somebody hike behind. Watch this person. Another thing they said is make wise decisions. And you'll see, I soon discovered that this hike was more than just a backpacking trip. It's a little slice of life in general. But it's I considered it kind of life in a petri dish. It was just a very focused, but it's all about life. We need to be watching out for one another. We need to be helping one another. We need to ask for help of our fellow church members. That's not something that I could probably do, is ask for help.
I heard you say Sacramento. Did I hear wrong?
Yeah, Sacramento is where you go, they pick you up in the Sacramento airport. And then no, it's not Sacramento. San Diego. You may think I'm relaxed, but I'm not. Yeah, San Diego. Yeah, in San Diego is where it is. But we don't often ask one another for help. We need to ask one another for help from time to time. But also we need to be watching out for one another to see if somebody needs help. One day, I was, first of all, I'll tell you, I don't hike on Sabbath. Nothing wrong with hiking or walking on Sabbath, but I've got a 35-pound pack on my back. I'm doing that 6 days a week. If I kept right on hiking, Sabbath would be no different than any other day. And so it's not a matter of right or wrong, it's a matter of Sabbath is special. Sabbath is a different day than all the other days. And so, when it comes time for Sabbath, Friday night, I need to be watching for some place to camp. Usually, sometimes it's difficult. You're on a steep ridge, and there's ridges up here, and I don't know where I'm going to camp, and you just keep walking and walking and walking and watching your clock, and finally decide maybe I can camp here. But on Friday night, I need a very special place to camp because I want to be someplace where I'm not obviously seen, because we watch out for one another. And they see a tent up in the day, they'll come over and say, "Are you sick? Are you well?" So I want a place where it's kind of peace and quiet. And that's not always easy to find. So come Friday afternoon, from 2 o'clock on, I start praying harder and harder and harder to see if I can find a place. And that's why I experience God walking with me. It seems like come Friday evening, all of a sudden I'd find a spot over here. But see, the one time it started getting Friday evening, it was getting kind of a little later, and I was walking along and my phone kind of beeped. And I looked down and it was one of my friends, Wendy. She said, "Just thinking of you, Vern. Hope you're having a good hike." Well, I was getting kind of discouraged because I wasn't finding a place to camp. But I was sitting on a little rock. And so that encouraged me. I got up, and just a little bit later, I saw a beautiful place to camp. And they had these little signs there, "No camping here." They're trying to rebuild the area. Oh, then I had to really pray, and I hiked on until there was little bushes like this, not big trees, but off a ways. I could see maybe it's open. I walked way over there. There was a big bush. I went behind the bush, and you couldn't quite see the trail, but it was a nice rocky place where I could put my tent. And so I stayed there for my first Sabbath. It was very peaceful, but every once in a while, I could hear hikers over there going by. For some reason, right there by my tent, they'd always stop. And they'd talk. And I wonder, do they see me? I don't think they see me. What are they doing over there? So after everybody was gone, I got up and I went over there. And there was some rocks that said 50. That was the 50-mile marker. And I stopped just 20 feet from the 50-mile marker for my first Sabbath. Each Sabbath, it had come time for sundown, and lo and behold, I'd find a nice place to go off, and I found one place where I just kind of walked up this dry area, and there was a nice tree, some nice camp spots, but nobody knew it was up there. Nobody saw it. I could hear hikers going by, but nobody ever saw me. So I was able to read through all the Gospels while I was on the trail. What an amazing experience. Reading the Gospels when I'm out there. It was it was harder hike than I thought it would be. You're tired, you're sore. You don't always know where you're going to spend the night. You're not exactly sure what the weather's going to be. And yet you got to keep moving because Canada's a long ways away. Although my first goal was to get to Kennedy Meadows by probably the middle of June. And so where was I? So Sabbath was a real blessing. I was able to be quiet. I was able to read my Bible. I was able to relax. And then I'd get up Sunday morning, 4:30, and I could hike. Now, I could get in many miles by noon that way. See, there's people, you hike alone. There were certain days that I could hike all day and not see anybody. See, if somebody camps a mile here and somebody a mile up camps, well, in the morning we all get up and we all move up. And so nobody sees anybody because we're all moving up. And so some days I could hike all day and not see anybody and then set up my tent at night all alone. Other days I saw people all the time. But I got up at 4:30 and I started hiking. This was on Easter Sunday. And I had put in 23 miles. It was hot. I was tired. And I came to the water cache. We're always looking for the water cache. Some people they build up a little box and they have shelves on there with gallons, jugs of water. And they had many gallons of jugs of water there. And I was glad to see that. I had pretty good water, but I needed a little bit more water. But I had hiked 23 miles because those people that I hike with, I meet up with people from time to time. But on Sabbath, they'd get ahead of me. But on Sunday, if I'd get up at 4:30 and start hiking and hike all day, I got pretty close to them. And I usually run into them again. And so they didn't know that I was lagging behind. But I came to the water cache, and on the water cache there was a sign, Mary's Place. At Mary's Place, Mary is serving Easter dinner to the PCT hikers from 2 o'clock until the food is gone. It's 2 o'clock. And I just have been hiked 23 miles, and I was hot and tired. But when you're on the trail, you like food. I know that those PCT hikers are probably eating up all the food, but I still wanted to go, and I wanted to see if there was any food left and see who was there at Mary's Place. Mary's Place is a special place. I think she lives down in the valley, but she owns some property up there, and she comes driving up there with her big pickup camper, and she sets up tables and sometimes serves the PCT hikers, but she has an outhouse built up there. She loves poetry, literature, so she has a little box where you can trade books there, but nobody really does. Nobody wants to really carry a book, on your pack. But she has cutouts of different literary figures. She's kind of an eccentric lady. But she was serving Easter dinner. I looked at my watch, it's 2 o'clock, but I want to get there. But I was already tired and already gone 23 miles, and it was 2 miles to Mary's Place. Well, I didn't stop and sit down and rest. I just kept right on going. And it wasn't an easy trail. It wasn't a path. It was rocky. It was dusty and dirty. I had to scramble up and over some rocks to get over there. But I kept chugging along. By the time I got to Mary's Place, I was dusty and I was dirty and sweaty. And I was dragging and barely making it. And I saw the little sign that pointed to Mary's Place, and I went over there. She had a dispenser of water and some soap, but I didn't have time for that. I had to go and just stick my trekking poles in the ground and take my pack off, and I walked over to the covered area, and they had some picnic tables under there, and somebody said, "There's an orange. If you want it. Mary's not quite ready for dinner, but there's an orange." I took that orange in my hand. I don't want to ever forget that feeling that when I pulled that rind back, the mist of that oil in my nose, it was the beautifulest fragrance I've ever smelled. As I pulled the peeling back, it felt wonderful. I pulled the section out of that orange and put that section in my mouth, and those little segments burst with the greatest flavor, the most amazing flavor I have ever tasted. And as those juices flowed down the back of my throat and into my stomach, I knew I was going to be okay. I'd hike another 500 miles for that orange. You know, we have no idea what a little thing to you could mean to somebody else. You don't know what people are going through. To you, it's just an orange. To me, it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. What is it to you to smile to somebody? It's no big deal. To say it's a great morning, I hope you have a good day. Is that very hard to do? That person may have lost their spouse last week and may be grieving. You don't know. You have no idea what they're going through. But we need to give more oranges to people. A few days later, I was coming down a mountain. That was a good day because it was mostly downhill. And I like to go fast. So it gets you tired, but I was just chugging along down this hill. And out of the corner of my eye on a rock, there was a little cardboard sign. And it said, "Trail Magic" below. I looked down the slope, and down there was a dirt road, and there was a car, there was a covered awning, and there were some chairs down around there, and I saw a few people down there. So I had quite a ways to go, but I got excited about that, and I came on down there and went over there. They said, "Drop your pack and come and get something to eat." Oh, they had ice cold drinks, fresh strawberries that were just coming on in California, grapes. They had chips, salty chips is what we like. They said that their daughter hiked the Pacific Crest Trail the year before, last year, and people helped her. They were so appreciative of those people helping their daughter that they drove 2 hours from Orange County up the back road and set this up, and they wanted to pay us back. And so they brought all this for us. They sat us around the circle as we got our drinks and our fruit. And then there was several of us around there, and they said, "Tell us, what is it like on the trail?" Well, somebody said, "Well, it's pretty brutal out there. You know, it's pretty rough." And so I told the orange story to them. And I told them that when I took that orange, I said, I was surprised. I almost had an emotional breakdown. And it was quiet. That whole circle, it was quiet. Pin drop you could hear. And then one man said, "I can relate to that." And another guy shyly said, "Me too." And so I learned out there, God taught me, we need to help one another. I believe Jesus is coming very, very soon, and we're going to have some rough journeys right here that we're going to be going through. We need to help one another. I'm always glad to help any of you. I like to help people, but I don't always go and just wish you a happy day, or I don't reach out very often. I want to do something bigger for you. But no, it's those little things. Just a little orange here or there. Just a little thing can make a big difference in somebody's life. And especially in the time of the end that we're going to be going through. Let's vow to reach out to one another. And to let's help each other. I got up to Kennedy Meadows. I met several people along the way that I was compatible with and I liked, but we didn't hike together, but we said, let's meet at Kennedy Meadows the middle of June, and then let's hike together as we go through the mountains. Maybe the snow will melt rapidly and we'll be able to go through. but it wasn't going to happen. By the time we got up there, they said that snowpack is 202% of average snowpack. The mountains are avalanche risk. The snow is too deep. You need full-on mountaineering equipment to go through. And now it's getting hot. And everything is coming down. And the rivers are going to be swollen and dangerous. Lake Tahoe doesn't even have any beaches anymore. It's completely full of water. And I went out for a hike, and you call it an adventure, but I thought I was going out to have fun. But I didn't go out to be in a dangerous situation. I didn't want to die out there. And I tell you, God walked with me, because right after I got to Idlewild and had passed San Jacinto, another storm rolled in, and the mountain slid down, and the trail was obliterated. People couldn't hardly get through. It was very, very dangerous. People had to be airlifted off. And this was all just kind of behind me. I got to Wrightwood because my crown came off. And there was one dentist in Wrightwood. He turned out to be an excellent dentist. But I was able to get cell phone reception on the trail. I called the head, and I told her the situation. I said, is there any possibility I could get in tomorrow to see the doctor? He can see you at 7 o'clock in the morning. I said, okay, I think I can do it. I've only got 15 miles to get to town. Then I got to figure out, well, I 15 miles to get to the trailhead, and then figure out how to hitchhike into town. Then I got to find where the motel is. Then I got to find where the dentist is. I said, I'll do that by 7 o'clock tomorrow. And so I got into town. The doctor looked at my tooth. He did an x-ray. And then he scraped and looked it all over, and he said, there's nothing wrong with your tooth. There's no decay in your tooth. He ultrasound cleaned the crown, and he said, the crown looks good. He said, I don't know why I can't just put permanent glue on there and glue it on. He said, you should never have another problem. So he glued it on, and I've never had another problem since. But that put me a day behind. I was going to go and climb Baden-Powell, but because of that, I stayed over an extra day. The next day, a tremendous storm came in. The mountaineers were coming back off the mountain. They said that snow is just blizzard on Baden-Powell. Nobody should be up there, and all the hikers are coming in. I couldn't get my room for that night, but I called, and a lady said, I've got a little cabin out a mile out of town, but you got to let me know now because it's going fast. And I said, I'll take it. And so I stayed one extra night. The next day after that, the sun came out. It was beautiful. I went up Baden-Powell, and when I got up there, the Joshua trees on one side had like 3-inch buildup of ice on it. The storm had been tremendous. If this crown hadn't come off, I had been right up in the mountain when the storm hit full on. And so I could see God with me every step of the way. What was the other thing, Carol, that... I know there were several miracles. I know that I got a sinus infection, and I had to go into Ridgecrest Memorial Hospital. And 2 weeks, and then I had to come home. 2 weeks later, Ridgecrest was hit with the earthquake. So just right behind me, everything started falling apart right behind me. But there was many instances where we could tell God had protected me, because right behind me, people were getting hurt and people were getting in accidents. But I had a lot of snow that I had to hike down through. And coming off one of the mountains, my leg got post holed down in, and I did a forward tumble, and the ice is like sandpaper and takes your takes your skin off, so I had blood all over, but nothing major. But I did get very tired of the snow. Sometimes you can't find the trail. But I met some amazing people. Met a couple from Northeast Portland. They were kind of in between. He is a government worker, but he's thinking about going into pre-med. And I'd see them from time to time. A nice young couple. Coming down off of, I forget the name of the town, but I was up about 9,000 feet. It rained, and it sleeted and stung the side of the face. But then it kind of let up. I was able to set the tent up at night, but my shoes were sopping wet, and I put them in the vestibule. It was cold. I woke up in the morning, it was cold. Put on my down jacket, and it was so cold, I got all ready to go. And I know that day I was going down to the valley floor. Maybe it would warm up. Hoping it would warm up. Got ready to go, and I look at my shoes. They're wet, they're still wet and icy. You know, take your shoes and fill them up with water sometime till they're nice and wet. Put them in the refrigerator, and then in the morning, see what it's like to put them on. That afternoon, I met another couple at there was a little spring of water where we stopped for lunch, and they were there. And I told them, I had a first today. They said, what was that? I said, it was my first time ever to put my feet early in the morning into icy, wet shoes. And he laughed and said, huh, that was my first too. And he said, I held those shoes and I looked and looked at them, and I don't think I can do this. But what choice do you have but to put on your wet, icy shoes and continue hiking? I came on down. We hiked all day coming down to the valley floor, and there was a water department that had the area blocked off, but there was a little paved road that I had to hike on for a mile or so. And then I went through a big field on a trail, and it was hot, and the wind was blowing. I am sure it was blowing 40 miles an hour with gusts up to 60. It was really severe wind. We came to the area where it was a dry riverbed, and the sand was really deep and just plodding through. I had to push against the wind because the wind was so strong. It was really laborious. And then finally got through all that after a few miles, and then it came to a little trail, and I popped around the corner, and the wind was still blowing, and there was no place to put up your tent at all. And how could you put up your tent in that big a wind? So I popped around the corner, and there was those friends from Northeast Portland that I had met. And they were just the most forlorn couple you could ever imagine. They were just sitting there beside the trail, their head in their hands. And they looked up at me and said, Vern, we don't know what to do. We don't know where to put up our tent, and we couldn't put it up in this wind. What do we do? I said, you get up and you just keep moving. You won't find any place worse than this. Well, that's for sure. And so I said, you just hike until it gets dark, and if you don't find anything better, you just lay down. And so I went hiking on, and I found a nice little gully, and the wind had kind of blocked it from this gully, and I was able to get down in there. They hiked on. The next day I got up, and when I hiked, they were about a mile up. They found a little place off in the field that was a little flat where they could put up their tent. And but they were an interesting couple, because a few days after that, we were going up a steep, steep mountain, and it was so hot. I got under a little tree and was resting, and I could hear some noise coming up the mountain, and I heard him saying, when we get to the top, we'll have lunch. Oh, and I don't want no more of your complaining. And just then he popped around the corner and he saw me and said, oh, Vern, we're having a bad day. I said, I can tell, but I'm having a nice time here underneath the tree. And they kept on hiking, but yeah, I didn't think I could do that trail. I kept having doubts until about 600 miles. I was just starting to get into it at around 600, 650 miles when I realized I can do this. And I was getting into, they say people that keep statistics of all the hikers say less than 50%, well, over 50% of the people drop out and don't ever make it to Canada. But of those who make it to Kennedy Meadows, the majority of those are able to go on to Canada. So I'm confident if the snows hadn't been blocking the mountains, I could have made it to Canada. I'm not sure what kind of shape I'd have been in when I came back, because when I went to the hospital, they said, "How much do you weigh?" I said, "I don't know." And I stepped on the scales, and it shocked me. I was 20 pounds less than when I left home. When my wife picked me up at the airport, she said she was fearful. It frightened her, because I had a big beard and my hair was down here, and my face was real shrunken in, and I was skinny, and my pants were sagging off me, and I couldn't keep my pants on. That all changed, though. I gained my weight back. Now I'm starting to have to watch what I eat again. For a while there, I could eat everything I wanted to. Some of you may have seen it on Facebook where I was eating the sundae. I went to the restaurant, and after my greasy dinner, I said, "I want the biggest sundae you have, 'cause I like ice cream. I want the biggest sundae you have." And so she brought me this big sundae, and I told her, I said, "I'm hiking the PCT and I can't keep my pants up." And so she says, and I says, people at home, they think I'm wasting away and they think I'm on a diet, but I tell them I'm not trying to diet. It's just happening. And so she says, "I have to take your picture. Give me your camera. I have to take a picture of you so you can send it home and tell people you're not trying to lose weight, and this will prove it to them." So I had no, that's not true. I didn't have a real good time. I had a real good experience. I hope to maybe go back and do some other sections another time. I wish I could have seen what would have developed further, but I am so thankful to God that He gave me 750 miles. I walked after Kennedy Meadows another 45 miles to where I was at 10,400 feet, and the ranger said, "If you go any further, it's completely under snow." And I'd already gone through snow, and then you have to hunt for the trail, and then there's more snow, and then there's trail. But he said, from here on, the trail is completely under snow for like the next 400 miles. And so I took off there and came down into Lone Pine and came home. But that gave me enough time on a trail to see what it's like out there and see that God was walking with me every step of the way and protecting me. And He taught me some lessons. Let's support one another. Let's watch out for one another. Let's help one another, because I think what's going to be happening in this world is a much more dangerous hike than hiking on the Pacific Crest Trail. Did you have your hand up?
Yeah, were you scared of bears or wild animals out there?
No, I was getting late towards the afternoon, and it was hot, and I was tired, so I had my head down, going along, and there was a slope coming down like this, and then there's trail here, and the slope goes on down. I was hiking along, and right there, out of the corner of my eye, a rattlesnake was coming down this way to go across the trail. And he saw me just the same I saw him, and he reared back, and I almost did a backward somersault with my 35-pound pack on. I didn't know that I could jump that high with a backpack. And I came off, and I almost fell off the trail, and I thought I was going to trip and go somersaulting down, but I caught myself. But I back paddled really fast. And then the rattlesnake looked at me, and then he went on by. I had had another encounter with the rattlesnake before that, but I saw him in plenty of time. But I learned about rattlesnakes. If you don't know, if you live here in Oregon, you see a snake, they're gone. They're on the trail, they're gone. But a rattlesnake, they don't run because they don't have to. They've got plenty of venom. And so they just rattle their little tails and make some noise. And I say, "Shoo, shoo." They just look up at me, and they won't budge. They just don't have to. After a while, the one rattlesnake, I had to stay there for a little bit, And then this lady came by, and she was in a big hurry. And I stopped. I said, stop. She says, why? I said, there's a snake. She looked at him and said, oh, I think I can get around him. And she went over to go around him. Boy, he reared up and he shook his tail so loud, and she jumped back and says, maybe I don't want to go by there right yet. We waited, and then finally he saw that we were getting impatient, and very slowly he crawled away. Other than that, I saw one marmot. One, it's a Sierra marmot. They're cute little guys. But I didn't see any. I got lost in the desert once. Of course, I don't really get lost. I just run around in circles sometimes. And I was out there and I saw a deer. But I was surprised how few animals that I really saw. But I saw lots of flowers. Just the cactus were in bloom. Everything was beautiful. And it was gorgeous. But I met a lot of nice people. You come to the trailheads, the people are there to pick you up, take you into town. One time, coming into Tehachapi, I think was I came out to the road, and there was some power grid there, power lines and stuff, and there was a guy working over there. Which way to Tehachapi? That way or this way? He said, that way. So I stood out there, and I thought, I hate hitchhiking. My pack is out there, and I'm all dirty and grimy, and I put my thumb out. Car after car goes by, and I get discouraged. This hitchhiking is no good. And then a guy stopped and picked me up. And I got in the car and looked at my watch, and it hadn't even been 10 minutes yet since I hit the road. So I was just being impatient. That was probably the longest I ever had to wait. Usually I'd get right out there and whoop, car would stop right away. Say, oh, you going into town? Hop in. And they'd take us into town. Then the people were really nice. You go to the restaurants, and the lady looks at me dirty and grimy, and she says, you a PCT hiker? I said, yes. She says, oh, I took 10% off your bill for you. Same with the motels. You're a PCT hiker, they give you a discount. Sometimes a pretty significant discount. And they put banners up, we welcome PCT hikers. And they treat you like royalty. However, there's a darker side to the trail as well. The farther north I got, the more marijuana got smoked. The more beer got drank. Because the trail gets harder and harder, I think. Because I saw more and more drinking the farther north I got. And there's some of these places, one place, Hiker Heaven in Agua Dulce. And she has a trailer where people can stay in. You can put tents all over her backyard. She's got a nice home. They let you stay there. She's got everything washing and drying, and a sewing machine room, and everything. Beautiful setup that Donna Anderson has for hikers. But she started out with hikers coming through. You know, there might be 10 or 12 of them every season coming through. Now there's about 80 people coming through every night. And as soon as they get to her place, they catch a ride into town, which is 2 or 3 miles, and they all come back with cases of beer in their hands. And they all drink all night. And she said 90% of all their recyclables is beer bottles. And she said, this is my last year of doing this. Maybe next year, but she says, I'm quitting. There's too many people expect her to do things for them. And she likes to help somebody, but these people are relying on her, and they're taking advantage of her by just drinking all night and smoking their weed. And it's just, a lot of the trail angels are getting tired of just being expected to do things for people. And so they said that over the last 15 years of taking care of hikers, they have seen a decline in the character of hikers. And so I think a lot of the hikers now, there's some other trails up that goes from Montana over to the coast. There's some other trails, Continental Divide trails. There's some other trails, I think, that the real nature people are starting to go on, because the PCT is becoming too much of a party trail in other areas. But there's still good people there, and there's still people that are helping one another. But any questions that want to?
What was that about you in the snow and then you got hot chocolate?
Hot chocolate. Yeah. I don't know. There's a lot of things that, all these little things are really wonderful when you're out there like that. But still, 745 miles is a good distance to go. And I think that after looking the whole thing over, I'd rather go in sections. Because that constant drive that I got to get to Kennedy Meadows by June 15, because I got to get to Canada by the middle of September, that constant drive, you're just push. Some of the places, oh, this is a nice camp spot. I'd like to have a little late breakfast and get up. But no, you got to get up early. And it's cold. Well, that's the thing I didn't like either. It was always cold. I had only 2 or 3 nights that it was pleasant to get up in the morning. Every other time it was just cold getting up. And I didn't think California was supposed to be that way. But it was cold. Okay, the last night, I was way up in the Sierra Mountains. And I had hiked, 25 miles. And I only had a little bit to go the next day to come out at Lone Pine. And boom, you could hear the thunder roll. And it started to rain. And I'm very afraid of hypothermia because I don't have a lot of clothes. I'm going ultralight. And if I get wet, I don't have a change of clothes. And I didn't have my rain jacket out at the time. So I look down over here and I see some big trees. I see a flat spot that looks really nice and soft. So I dash down there, throw out my tent. The pine needles must have been that thick. And my tent stakes are about that long. And so I could not get it set up at all. And then it cut loose raining. And so I didn't want to get all my stuff wet. I threw my pack into the tent. It wasn't up. No, the tent wasn't up, but it was a tent at least. And so I jumped into the tent, threw my pack in the tent. I jumped in my tent. And I grabbed my umbrella and I stuck my umbrella, opened my umbrella up, and it kind of held the tent up around me a little bit. And it just was more than your shower could even do. It was just, they say it never rains in California, but it pours. And it just poured. And I thought, well, I'll stick this out and then it'll stop. But it did that all night. Just rain. And so I had a little mat that I kind of tried to roll out without getting anything else in there. But the floor was all wet. There was water all inside. And it was cold. And every once in a while I'd get my stove out and turn my stove on a little bit to try to get warm, not let it touch anything. So the last night on the trail was very miserable. The one good thing about California is every morning the sun comes out. So I was looking forward to that. And sure enough, the next morning the sun came out. I shook the tent off, loaded it up. I'm getting out of here. And I came home. And right now, I should still be getting close to Canada out on the trail. And I am very thankful to be here with you today. Thank you.